That's fine. It's the ghosts of bad lighting. Ooh, here for Halloween. What's up, everybody? Happy week 8. Sigmund Bloom, Chris Allen, Dr. Jene Bramel, getting you ready for a haunting Sunday, as always. And we're going to jump right in, Doc. We have some tough choices, not just about Dak Prescott, but also the players connected to Dak Prescott. Has to be playing on a Sunday night. What do we do? How can you help people who have Cowboys decisions today?
There is no good lighting for me, by the way. It's only laziness. I'm just happy to see the sun for a change.
Yeah, right.
After the last week or so. I think the decision with Dak Prescott is fairly clear. If you've got a hedge, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes, Daniel Jones, or Kirk Cousins, and that's a reasonable thing to do. I mean, if you'd like to use Prescott over Cousins or Jones, then you're going to have that opportunity. I think the decision that you guys are going to have to work through and discuss is, what do you think of Cooper Rush if you can get him on your roster behind Prescott versus whatever other quarterback 2 you have? And I don't know how confident I feel about that situation, but I think the Vegas betting markets moved because somebody found out that Prescott had that PRP injection at some point earlier this week, and nothing has changed since then. So if the team is hedging and saying that if he is not healthy enough to go, we're not going to risk him for the rest of the year and turn a potential 1-week situation into multiple weeks, there's just really not enough time after a PRP injection for anybody to feel comfortable that that's the case, I wouldn't think. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. Nothing has really changed for me over the last 48 hours, despite the fact that the team said, we're going to make a decision on Saturday, and then they allowed him to travel and said, we won't make a decision until pregame warmups. That's just telling you that he's not fully healthy. So I think he is still clearly to the doubtful side of questionable. If you've got a quarterback 2 of any consequence at all, you're in a situation where you're probably just going to have to use that player. And then if Prescott plays and he looks wonderful, then you're good for the rest of the year. But I don't see a strong scenario in which not only is Prescott healthy enough to play, but that he gets through the game with so much upside that you trust to use him. So I think he's probably going to be inactive. And if you've got any kind of quarterback 2 at all behind him, I think you put him in your lineup. And then, if Prescott plays, he plays. But I don't think that's going to be the case.
So, Dr. Jene, with Austin Eckler, I know that from everything that we've heard, and even what I saw the tweet from Stephania Bell saying that Eckler had himself still in the lineup.
Yes.
Which I thought was pretty cool. But is there a chance for aggravation during the game to pull him out? I mean, what should we expect?
I want to see the timestamp on when Eckler put himself in the lineup.
I want receipts.
That's right. That's just my natural detective nature there. But yeah, that's a wonderful sign. Brandon Staley didn't really express much concern this week. I think the nugget of information he gave us that it wasn't a midweek injury that cost him. He was just a little bit sore, and that's something that all players go through. So if we didn't see anything specific last week, the team is being accurate with us that it wasn't a Wednesday or early Thursday practice injury, then there's not much concern. I don't usually get too worried about the Chargers not practicing players unless we can kind of see what the injury is. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, not so much 2 weeks ago, but in previous years, Eckler himself have all been missing practice at times during the week, DNP all the way through Friday. We're never sure what's going on because the Chargers are a little bit underreported, and then they play well. And I think that's likely what's going to happen with Eckler today. We don't know if it's a hip pointer situation or a small hip flexor strain or something like that. Yes, both of those issues could be aggravated in the wrong situation today. But leading into this game, I think I'd put less strength on the back-to-back DNPs and more strength on Eckler saying he's going to go, and Adam Schefter pretty much confirming that this morning.
Gene, inquiring minds want to know, can anyone confirm that Dr. Gene is dressed up for Halloween?
How many years in a row now has it been that I've forgotten to get dressed up?
No, it's fine. Hey, for me, it was just really easy.
My laziness, and there probably is my... Yeah, in fact, I can see it. That's how lazy I am. I can see the the pirate hat and mask that I usually wear just behind me. So
yeah, so you dress up like when you go into the office on Halloween. Do you usually dress up for your young patients?
Yes, I was Pac-Man on Friday.
Ooh, I like the oldie but goodie.
Yeah,
that's good. The kids need to know about Pac-Man.
Yeah, the parents appreciated it this year a little bit more than the kids did. So This would be the one year where I had fewer teenagers on Friday than usual. Most of my 3-year-olds looked at me like, are you just wearing a big yellow shirt? What is going on? So
Yeah.
they enjoyed the dots that we put all around the office, though. They could follow the dots wherever they wanted to go.
Oh, wow. Good job. Wow. I'm impressed. See, you get bonus points. Who cares? If there's children watching, you've got the shark. They recall it when I wear this, they call me Daddy Shark because, well, you know,
Don't put the song in anybody's head.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Let's. I mean, it is. Hold on.
now you got him.
He's rattled.
Now he has to do it now.
This is good.
See, this is why people tune in.
This is not good video either, but sticking with the theme of laziness, I can turn into Jack Sparrow in a matter of moments here. So
right.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Jack Sparrow, really just a thinly veiled Keith Richards. Honestly, it's like if Keith Richards was a pirate.
All right,
but
there we go.
Oh, nice. And we got the Minecraft. Look at this. This is just all transforming.
Yeah.
Okay, now you have to answer as Jack Sparrow, Gene. You didn't realize this. Okay.
I don't have my rings on, so
that's okay. You don't really have to. But let's. I think
like Steve. We actually, strangely or not, I could go downstairs and get one that Chris. I don't mean to one up you here, but it's probably 10 times the size of that.
Oh.
You could fit like 1/3 in screen. Okay.
Where's the rum? Somebody bring me some rum.
Yes. Where's the rum? Where's Gronk? That'd be a great costume, by the way, a Rob Gronkowski costume. If you were wearing your Rob Gronkowski costume, Gene, would you be getting ready to play football today?
Yes. Yeah, I think he's going to play. I don't think they would have let him practice in pads if they were concerned about him taking contact and had him planned for him to miss through the bye next week. So, and then Adam Schefter, it was kind of sneaky yesterday, I thought. I mean, there's still some. Bruce Arians wouldn't commit to Gronkowski plan, but Adam Schefter put him in a list of every other player that's essentially listed, not listed, and ready to play today as he's expected to play. So I think that's going to happen. I don't know that you're going to see him play every down, but I'm expecting him to be on the field and in certain packages and those that he's going to be productive and used in. So I don't have too much concern about Gronkowski.
So, Dr. Gene, with Nick Chubb coming back this week, I mean, any chance of a setback, or what should we expect for him? Like a normal amount of snaps or something less?
I think so. I mean, without Kareem Hunt there, I know Darrence Johnson played very well a couple of weeks ago, but I'm pretty reassured about Chubb. I thought this had the look of kind of a multi-week situation, and for him to be back on the practice field as quickly as he was tells you that it was just too much of a turnaround to a Thursday night game. And for him to be fully practicing and off the injury report altogether, yes, I don't know that we're fully outside the window of aggravation for him, but I think the risk is minimal. And with Kareem Hunt not there, as long as Chubb's conditioning is where it needs to be, he's going to be a 15 to 20 plus touch guy today easily.
And then Monday night game, Gene. Monday night. It looks like we may get 2 out of 4. No Barkley, no Galladay. Kadarius Toney, not as much practice as Sterling Shepard, but both travel with the team. We can handle the fantasy side of it as far as the actual availability side and how much they're going to play. What do we think of these Giants receivers?
I think Shepard is fine based on what I'm reading. Toney, I still don't know exactly what to think about Toney because I don't know that we have a clear idea of exactly what his injury is. And he looked so relatively good on those first 2 touches a couple of weeks ago. And then the third one, he sort of pulled up a little bit without anything obvious. So it's hard to know, is this more foot than ankle? How is it being described? What precisely the injury is? When I was trying to decide how to counsel folks this morning on the risk of aggravation, it was hard because I don't know that we've got a good sense of exactly what that situation is. So looked pretty good in practice video, favoring things a little bit. The beat writers are all convinced that he's going to play. And Toney is the type of player where he doesn't have to be on the field for all 60 snaps. The snaps he's on the field, he is probably going to be the first or second option on those situations. And, 20 to 30 snaps could turn into 5 to 7 touches, and they may be productive. So, I've got some questions that people were debating between Toney and some fairly low impact players. And in that case, I think you just roll with Toney and hope for the best, knowing that even though he was carving out a little bit larger role in the offense before he was injured, that he could be a 1 to 3 target player anyway, even if he was getting 40 snaps and productive. So I don't have too much concern that he's going to be inactive and not have any chances at all. I don't think there's a significant risk of aggravation. I'll let you guys talk about one of the questions I had this morning was, exactly where are they going to use Tony? I mean, Shepard and Slayton and all of those guys are similar. So how are they going to rotate them around? What routes are they going to run? But I think in Tony's case, when he's on the field, they are going to have called plays that would involve his number. So I think he's safe to use. Aggravation risk is still there though.
Would you apply the same logic for Jerry Judy? I mean, the risk is still probably there for a re-aggravation, but when he's on the field, likely the second option in that passing game, second, third, maybe. But I mean, would that be the same process for Judy?
I think so. I didn't really like what I was reading on Judy Friday with the DNP due to soreness. It sounded like maybe they were pulling back a little bit because they were concerned. So I reached out to Cecil and I said, it sounds like he was looking really good in practice. What do we need to make of Friday's situation? He's coming. There's not going to be any issue. They're going to activate him. He should be fine. He looked good. And then that's what happened. So I was sort of hedging on Saturday morning thinking, well, even if they brought him back, maybe his conditioning was such that he'd only be able to get a certain number of snaps. But it sounds to me like they gave him through that Thursday night game. This was the plan all along. The soreness is an expected part of his reconditioning back to football shape, and that's where we are. So yeah, I don't know that we're going to get 8 to 10 targets from him in his first game back. He may not even play every down, but I feel a lot more comfortable saying that he's got a good chance to get a good 5 to 7 touches sooner than later. So I think I think I would trust Judy a little bit more than Tony, but they're kind of both in that same range. You're correct.
Gene, I think the last one we just got to touch on is Alex Collins, and it seems like maybe we're learning about how Seattle is going to manage him, where maybe if different teams were managing a player this way, we might be more wary. But with Alex Collins, not that we've been getting a lot from him lately, but what we've been getting, we should still expect to get today against Jacksonville?
I think so. I think the Alex Collins question for me has more to do with, do you think that Rashad Penny is going to be an important part of this offense, and he didn't get as many touches last week just because they were easing him back in and making sure that he didn't have another in-game issue with the calf as he did earlier in the season. And if he passed that test and they're not sold on Alex Collins being the lead back, then I think you're going to see at least a committee situation, if not a three-way committee situation with the other players that they have there. So I think Alex Collins is healthy enough to play. I would be more concerned about Penny's role than his injury as far as how many touches he's going to get today.
Got anything else for the good doctor, Chris?
I saw a question in the chat. I don't know. It's like it has no bearing on today's games, but did you have a comment on Kyler Murray's ankle, hamstring, or whatever that had him hobbling towards the back end of that game?
Not yet. That's all on my agenda for today. I didn't get a chance to look into too much of Thursday's stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that happened on Thursday night that we need to be mindful of going into waivers and what next week will look like. So I think from what I read, there was some concern about a high ankle type injury, maybe some soft tissue things as well. The team said that, and Murray himself said that he was feeling pretty good after the game, but those Thursday nights are tough because we don't usually get the same Monday post-game press conferences that we do on the Sunday game. So a little bit of information on Friday, but teams mostly have the rest of the weekend off. So we may not get any news from Bruce Arians until Monday. The team knows what's going on because he'll have been in the training room and they'll have known whether or not the usual high ankle swelling and stiffness comes. So Wednesday may be our first indication of whether or not Murray's got a chance to play this week. But at least the early returns were optimistic enough that it's hopefully not something that's going to limit him as a passer. Whether or not he's able to run is going to be more dependent on how much he can practice this week.
Gene, what's 1-1 on the Halloween candy draft board?
I'm more of a Reese's fan than anything else. So
yeah,
we'll go with that.
Like the good old Reese's Cup.
Yeah,
because there's 18 billion variations now.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, you can smush it into whatever shape you want. I'm not opposed to that necessarily, but I am old school Oreo. I am old school. I heard somebody ask a question about what's your favorite candy variation. I'm like, I don't know. I'm old. I'm almost 50 now. It's just give me the old standards, and I don't need almonds in my Snickers, and I don't need
right.
I don't need orange Oreos or anything.
It was good enough for us back in the day.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
They don't know how good they have it, but we all have it good with Dr. Gene. Always on our agenda every Thursday night, Sunday morning. You get all the Dr. Gene updates, including the game day injury updates with your Football Guys subscription. Doc, I've asked favorite last parting shot here. What is a pirate's favorite letter of the alphabet?
Ben told me this before. R.
No, the C.
Oh, well, I'm going to go with R.
I love it.
I like
love
the Waffles comment, by the way. Well done. Why are the painkillers always gone? Yes, that's probably right. Happy Halloween, friend.
Cheers, Doc. Yeah, that Arizona Green Bay game. We were on assignment on Thursday night. Chris, you know this too well as a Bengals fan. Like, I saw someone say, as a Packers fan, you ever get tired of it just working out? It just somehow works out for that team, just like it did against the Bengals. Maybe we'll get a rematch. Okay, we've got some time here to help everybody out there, including wonderful people in the chat room. Let's start with this Dak Prescott situation. First of all, Chris, where would you draw the line? Like, I suppose if we look at the games, you're going to wait around. Someone asked me this morning, like, wait around for Dak or if Dak doesn't play Cooper Rush or play Geno Smith. Like, no, I'll take my chances. Right.
Right.
What about, let me pull someone out here. What about if the other choice is Tua against Buffalo or Taylor Heineke at Denver? Or do you have an idea like how aggressive or conservative you would advise folks to be with Dak Prescott if they didn't have a hedge and let's say would have to just pick Cooper Rush off of the waiver wire?
I would say if it's one of those, if it's one of the guys that you were talking about, like prior to the list, so like the Geno Smiths of the world, like some of those guys that really don't get, even if you look at your roster with those guys in it, you're kind of just like, oh, really, it doesn't elicit like any sort of positive emotion like for those guys. That's where I'd probably draw the line. But for the other streamers that could possibly offer some upside, even though let's say Tua's in a bad spot against Buffalo. Like any of those other guys that might fall into that general range. Taylor Heineke, I think he like at least provides some upside because what did he have? Like 95 rushing yards last week. So like those guys, at least that could provide some punch in the right situation, or at least maybe pop off for a couple of touchdowns and an interception somewhere in there that you could at least see yourself getting, 15, 16 points out of it and just getting by at the position.
Right.
I think I would be comfortable with that. Cooper Rush, while what Dallas has been completely fine to implement a similar game plan, like with Dak out, because like last season when he was out, it was Andy Dalton still passing at a fairly high rate. They were still trying to like keep the offense moving at the same pace, right? It's not like they completely shifted everything, dropped the play calling down and just said, all right, we're just going to use Zeke, we'll use Pollard, and then that's it. And let's try and get out of here with as least amount of injuries as possible. They still ran the same offense. So it's possible that the wide receivers and everybody could get there just based off volume, but it's just what's the quality of targets from Cooper Rush? I think that's the real question. Whereas obviously it's going to be a massive downgrade. Right. So at least at the quarterback position, I would probably lean towards any of the other guys that could wind up getting you at least have a decent day despite their bad matchups for today.
Right. It's almost like it's easier to just list off the quarterbacks that we wouldn't advise playing over waiting, like Mike White and Davis Mills.
I can't.
Jimmy Garoppolo at Chicago. It's kind of like I call it just that fear of missing out when you put someone on the bench. You worried about missing out what Jimmy Garoppolo is going to do and watch him throw 4 touchdowns.
Right.
Maybe the thornier part of this, Chris, is CD Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Dalton Schultz. We already got a good question. It's funny. Like we have a Tony. We already had someone say Tony, Kadarius Tony, or Amari Cooper, and we had someone say Kadarius Tony or CD Lamb. So now we're crossing the streams here of 2 of these uncertain situations. If you had to make those calls, what call would you make?
I would lean towards Tony, to be quite honest.
Yes.
I do think that the Giants and Kansas City game, like already on its own, is one of those environments that should at least give us a decent amount of fantasy scoring on both sides, right? Theoretically, this is a get right spot for Patrick Mahomes and the rest of the offense, and of course Daniel Jones and the Giants should have to respond. So based on volume alone, I would already lean towards Tony. Like as we were talking with Dr. Gene, of course, the risk of re-aggravation is there. But if we're already talking about a team where we don't have any question marks at quarterback. Well, I guess we kind of do because it's Daniel Jones, but like everything else is still there for Tony to at least get a decent amount of volume. We know what he can do with the ball once it gets in his hands. So at least I have more confidence in Tony. I mean, if the risk of the risk of re-injury is the only thing holding you back, then I would say that Tony should be your answer.
Yeah, and there is a fear of missing out with Tony. There's absolutely a sense with Tony of, I mean, running the mental projections, if Tony is the clear number one target in this offense, and Tony does what he did the other times he's been on the field. Now, granted, I think that he wasn't sharing the field with Shepard, but obviously Daniel Jones understands that he's a compelling target. And I think Jason Garrett understands that he's a compelling target. And then you have, like you said, the added Kansas City matchup. And, it could be a fun game. I hope Daniel Jones makes it into a fun game. Where that Dallas-Minnesota game, can't you just picture like 32 carries for Dalvin Cook, 24 carries for Ezekiel Elliott, 12 carries for Tony Pollard, and a 17-14 game that comes down to like Greg Zuerlein or something like that. I mean,
100% in the range of outcomes. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's again where there's not as much fear of missing out. There was one question, and this one's going to get back to the Bengals here. Oh, I can't find it. One more injury player before we jump into some other questions. Trust Gronk in the first week back down here in New Orleans in the Superdome, or CJ Uzomah, he had the 2 touchdown games.
I would lean more towards Gronk at this point. I mean, if the team is throwing him out there, we already know about his connection with Tom Brady, and also just the raw target share that he had even before Antonio Brown was out of the picture. So if we've already got the more or less condensed target tree for Tampa Bay. What we know about the history of Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore. So if that isn't working out, then where are the rest of those targets supposed to go in a game that we're expecting to be fairly competitive between Tampa Bay and New Orleans? So I would lean more towards Gronk on the surface, and where Uzomah or whatever. Did you see the video that he put out of how you're supposed to pronounce? He actually went on. It was one of those public service announcement type of themed tweets that the Bengals put out of him pronouncing his name. Because obviously, since he's a larger figure, in everything else, everybody needs to know how to pronounce it. It's Uzomah or
Uzomah.
Yeah, I believe that's how you're supposed to.
No, it's good. I love it.
But
I love it.
I love it. I like them having fun with the notoriety. It's a positive thing to see, especially for Cincinnati being in the dumps for so long. But I think my question is not just the I guess his rise to fame, but how sustainable is this supposed to be? Because all along we've seen Cincinnati's pass rate over expectations start to creep up, and that's great. But we're also seeing guys like Tyler Boyd being left out of the picture. Are some of those targets going to oscillate back towards him? Samaje Perine getting into the action as well, as a pass catcher. So it's just where outside of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, is Uzomah going to be that consistent third option in that passing game? And I'm just not sure. I would lean more towards Tyler Boyd, but I'm still holding on to preseason takes. So that's where kind of my question is after there. So I still lean Gronk for sure.
Yeah, I mean Gronk is at this point. I think Gronk is, if he's on the field, you're probably playing him at tight end just because of the nature of the tight end landscape. But like you said, you add in the factor of what is it? Marshawn Lattimore has held Evans catchless in 4 of the matchups they've had.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And then last year,
yeah.
And then last year there were 2 games where he had 1 catch, and the 3 games against the Saints, in 2 of those games he had 1 catch. The other one was the game that was Tom Brady's worst game of his career, and what didn't exactly have a great game in that one. So how far do we go? Diego, great friend of the show, asks, would you sit Mike Evans for Devontae Booker?
No, I don't think I could do it. That's one of those. I don't think
picture Devontae Booker, right? You're like,
yeah. If it was another, I would say a different running back, let's say
Alex Collins.
I was going to say Khalil Herbert.
Sure.
Darrell
Williams.
Yes. Now you have a compelling argument where the fear of missing out with Mike Evans. What is it? He's been on almost a 2 touchdown per game clip.
God. Yeah.
And so there's your fear of missing out. Can he wind up, beating Marshawn Lattimore on just one play, 50 yards and a touchdown? It's entirely in the range of outcome. Whereas for Booker, it's I don't know. I can't really while history tells us that Lattimore has this matchup in the bag, the volume I think for Tampa Bay with Tom Brady just wanting to pass as much as possible in order to break literally every single record that he hasn't already. then it's just, for me, it's just, I would rather lean towards like Mike Evans being able to at least do the things that he's been doing the past few weeks than just already assuming that that's not going to happen and playing just at least for Booker specifically, I think that's a suboptimal play.
Yeah, he had a garbage time touchdown against Carolina last week, or he just would have been a mediocre play. Here's where I'm at with Booker. And look, there's outcomes where Booker doesn't score a touchdown and maybe he catches 7 passes for 33 yards in addition to rushing for 40 or 50 yards and is a 15-point play. But chances are Booker's going to fall in that 8 to 12-point range. Now, Mike Evans has plenty of 0 to 5-point outcomes, but like you said, there's also the 20-plus point outcome. And hopefully they'll move Evans around, do some things. Let me ask you this, because Tyler Johnson, as somebody told me correctly, was like the 5th read last week. Does that calculus change if you have to dig deep for a flex or a third wide receiver? How much does the Evans, he doesn't necessarily get you off of Evans to a backup running back in like Devontae Booker, but is it in other lineup decisions maybe persuade you to play Tyler Johnson?
Yeah, I think it should, because I think the problem with last week was that while we could see him being out in the field against Chicago and like running a bunch of routes, possibly like falling into some targets, but they didn't need him last week. Like they didn't really, they didn't need to really do much else other than like continue to do what they've done for the past like 6 weeks prior. But in this game, in this matchup, let's say if Jameis Winston is capable of just keeping them, keeping the game competitive and like leaning on the weakness of Tampa Bay's secondary, which is good. Look, they're good, but that just because of the amount of volume that they see, like that is part of the reason why like their statistics like look so bad, like from a secondary perspective. But if Jameis can keep this one competitive, where else are those targets supposed to go? Like outside of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, like where are those targets supposed to go? So I think in this game, if we assume that's going to be competitive, those targets should have to go somewhere. So I would think in this game, for this situation, I would lean towards Tyler Johnson.
Are you intrigued by Winston, Marcus Callaway, Adam Troutman, Traquan Smith on the possibility? It is Tampa. You abandon the run against Tampa. You air it out against Tampa. Plus the Jameis Winston revenge game, even the W. And are you intrigued by the Saints pass offense today?
I am. It's just that every other week, it's pretty much it's fairly clear that Sean Payton is trying to hide Jameis Winston, or at least like trying to hide Jameis Winston from himself, right? Like, trying not to allow him to turn him into like old Jameis. Right. And with them like being, I think they're like bottom 3, bottom 4 in terms of pass rate over expectation. It's just like we haven't really seen the volume unless it's just like they're pressed into it. And then you can kind of see already like, well, if they haven't really gotten into this rhythm of being a pass first, like even a pass heavy team, that's where you see those misfires, like the miscues to, what were we just seeing like deep passes to, who was it? Like Kevin White, just like a week ago. And like with Marcus Callaway not being on the same page with him, you saw him yelling at Traquan Smith on the sideline, like after one of the deep throws last week. So it's just, that's what you get when you don't really have, or you're not in sync like with your receivers. So hopefully they've been able to work out the kinks. The situation against Tampa Bay secondary would definitely lend itself to that. So yeah, I am interested like in them. It's just, we haven't seen it before. So it's hard for you to be able to trust it today. Yeah,
I think the offense needs Taysom Hill. I don't know if it's a good luck charm or something that puts the offense in comfort zone. They're not going to have him today. Yeah. It wouldn't shock me. I think Deontay Harris might be back out there, which makes it a little more interesting. Although when the Bucks beat the Saints in the playoffs last year, a lot of it was on the back of the running game, not the passing game. So, we still haven't seen Tom Brady have a great game against this Saints defense. I don't know exactly what he did as a Patriot, but certainly not in a Buccaneers uniform. By the way, I love the use of the word oscillate. Love it. We could talk about the oscillating offenses. Maybe one of the passing games doesn't necessarily have oscillation because it may not return back, but we get to Jacksonville against Seattle. And Seattle is certainly one of the top 5 defenses that we want to target, even though Jameis didn't do anything against them on Monday night, right? We're circling all the way back around to what we were just talking about. Getting a lot of questions about Jamal Agnew. Like Rick is talking about, he's only 3,700 on DraftKings. Someone else asked about Agnew or Laviska Shenault. Any thoughts on Agnew? I have some thoughts. We talked about him on the preview show, but I'm just curious if he's on your radar this week, Chris.
Yeah, because after seeing him, I think it was like I think it was actually take that back. It was the London game. It was
Yep.
like the game right after like DJ Chark had we assumed he was going to be out for the season. And I remember like what's the writer that covers the team? John Shipley.
John Shipley, our man.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I remember seeing the tweet saying like it was Jamal, Visca, and Marvin Jones starting, but Jamal was the one in the slot. And I just remember seeing that tweet, and I was just like, I kind of caught me. I was like, huh, okay. Well, we'll see. Let's see what we got here. And that's really like borne out. Like that's consistently been his role now. So if he's the one that's going to be taking like those targets that we had envisioned for Visca, okay, fine. Like now we've got something. And the targets have been consistent like for the last like few weeks, while Jacksonville's like passing rate isn't like supremely high or anything like that. I think they're more like back like just right behind like league average. But still, if he's getting some of those like high percentage targets like in the middle of the field, give him some yards after the catch. I mean, 4 or 5 targets with like maybe 60 yards. I mean, just like a basic like wide receiver 3, like flexes type option, like he falls squarely into that category for me.
He's got a high ceiling because for me, Chris, it goes back to, they wanted to draft Kadarius Toney. Urban Meyer wanted Kadarius Toney. Then they took Travis Etienne to play this role. And actually, even though we wanted it to be Laviska Shenault, he's more of an outside receiver. He's more of like an X receiver for them. And maybe, to be fair, that's a rational choice with him because as much as he's a physical marvel, he's not twitchy. He's not sudden. Jamal Agnew is. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see Agnew become, other than James Robinson, the most consistent part of this offense from here on out. And the other thing that I like to watch is coming out of buys. Teams can readjust. They can assess new priorities and put them in the game plan. And I wonder if Jamal Agnew, we can all go back to whenever Agnew got that contract. What was it, Chris? Like 4 years, 14 million or something like that.
Yeah.
It was more than a return specialist. It was a contract that, and remember, teams pay players for the production they expect, not the production the players already put up. So you wonder now if it took a little while, but they're integrating him in the offense and integrating him into that the H-back role that was in the Urban Meyer, the Percy Harvin role, the Curtis Samuel role. Okay, we're going to get to circle a lot of Kadarius Toney questions, but it's good because it gives us a chance. In this case, I am Ian's Cat. What's up, man? Ravens on bye, so you get to rest this week. Van Jefferson or Kadarius Toney? He says he's thinking Jefferson. What is Chris Allen thinking?
I'm also thinking Van Jefferson. Just with Deshaun Jackson like requesting a trade, not going to play today, and you have to think that has to do with the fact that Van Jefferson has earned himself that third wide receiver role like in that offense, and he's done well with it, to be quite honest. Right. I mean, and at times he's become like the read over Robert Woods like in that offense. So I 100% agree that Van Jefferson, like while I mean, the targets might not always be there because Matt Stafford has been, eating breakfast and hanging out with the Cooper Kupp. But I mean, in that offense, especially in today's matchup against the Texans, I'll play Van Jefferson over him for this week.
Yeah. And what people need to know is with Johnny Munt out for the year, now they're a 3-wide offense. Most of the time, Jefferson was in on 90+% of the snaps. So a competent to good wide receiver in the Rams offense in a game that they should roll, getting 90+% of the snaps. Yes, please. Yeah. That's the kind of option that's compelling enough to say, well, let's wait and see on Toney. And hey, it's like Dr. Gene said about Dak. If Toney goes off on your bench, wonderful. Going back to Dak, Ron Smith had a question here. Wentz or Ryan to replace Dak? We have Ryan against the Carolina defense. Is good. I don't know. Wentz against the Tennessee defense, which looked really good last week, but at the same time, this Colts offense is coming on. They are coming off of a big win and probably getting T.Y. Hilton back today.
Yeah, and I think in this case, I would say, here's how I'll frame it. If you're looking for, let's say, a safe floor, I would say Wentz is your guy. If you're looking for punch, I would lean more towards Ryan. I think especially for this game, which I would expect to be like somewhat high scoring between the Falcons and the Panthers, that game wind up being, let's say 50+ points like scored, like the 27-24, like even higher than that, like that sort of game, like between those two teams. Whereas with Wentz, it's like that, like he has been able to play well in games that the Colts have been able to at least be competitive in and control. And against Tennessee, I can see that one happening as well. But it like he doesn't really have that same upside that Matt Ryan has. Like we could see Matt Ryan have a 4-touchdown game today.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
see the same. I don't really see the same for Carson Wentz. A couple touchdowns, maybe 3, but more or less like with the offense running through Jonathan Taylor for the most part. It's just I don't really see the same ceiling. So that's how I'm looking at it.
Right. It's Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry exchanging like haymakers in the running game, if that's possible with the boxing metaphor. So while we're on Falcons, let's get a heat check on Cordero Patterson. Epidemic 619 asks, sit one out Terry McLaurin. He's going out to Denver, and their defense is really woeful right now. DJ Moore, who, at least he won't have to see Darius Slay. I don't even know if anyone really shut him down last week, but we know that I don't think we're going to see PJ Walker this week. Sam Darnold, I think, pretty bad. Yeah. Or Cordero Patterson, who didn't do much in the passing game, but just was the lead running back last week for the Falcons.
I'll take those first 2 receivers. I mean, I do think that with the offense more or less like becoming more tailored to Patterson's strengths, I mean, they are really trying to find ways to keep him on the field, keep defenses keying off of him, and then he's been producing regardless. Like, well, right. It doesn't really matter. But either way, like with the DJ Moore's like target share, I mean, we'll try and figure out like what's going on with Robbie Anderson. But either way, I think DJ Moore is still the primary read for his team. McLaurin is obviously the primary read for his team because without like, there's no Curtis Samuel. We don't really care about like Adam Humphries or any of the rest of the ancillary receivers in that passing game. Mm-hmm. So I would lean more towards like those first 2 wide receivers, like just easily categorized as like wide receiver 1. So I would go with those guys.
Yeah, it is still Atlanta that Carolina is going up against in DJ Moore. So it's not DJ Moore's fault that he hasn't been producing. And McLaurin, is going to get as many targets as he can. The only risk with McLaurin is injuries are piling up a little bit. But Denver's defense has been hapless. There's not really a wrong answer there, but I probably agree with you just because of the high upside there. David Pilling from Scotland, this isn't really a question, but he brought up Tyler Lockett. Is Tyler Lockett on the 10-foot pole list officially until Russell Wilson comes back for you, Chris? Or could you see getting cute, maybe trying to anticipate the Tyler Lockett with Geno Smith breakout game against the Jacksonville secondary?
Yeah, I think just because of the defensive matchup, I would give Lockett just one more week just to see like what the target share is going to look like. If we assume that Geno Smith is going to have a little bit more time to sit in the pocket, more time to look downfield versus just looking for the massive body that is DK Metcalf. So let's see if some of those targets can go Tyler Lockett's way. So I can understand the rationale, but over the past few weeks that's been difficult.
It's a similar question just about the Chicago receivers, or even Al Robinson specifically against San Francisco. Or, is it just like Lucy in the football at this point with the Bears receivers?
Yeah, I can't do it. There's too much. There's too much going on. Like whether it's if you want to put blame on Justin Fields, okay, fine. If you want to lay the blame at the feet of Matt Nagy, who's not even going to be there today, but still, and the coaching staff, Bill Lazor at all. Okay, fine. But there's something going on to the point where there's no trust between Justin Fields and his coaching staff. They're calling in on the headset saying there's 12 men on the field, go ahead and take the free play, and he throws an interception. So it's just that there's too much going on outside of the slow processing, getting taking multiple sacks and all that for me to want to trust any of the Chicago wide receivers at this point.
You've been hit by a smooth criminal. This one's a good one local for you. T. Higgins, he had 15 targets last week, Chris.
Oh, yes.
Or Kadarius Toney. So, big range of outcome for both of these guys. Which one are you more compelled by?
I mean, my Bengals bias would have me lean towards T. Higgins. I mean, the opportunity has certainly been there.
Right.
So if we can at least pencil in, I'm not going to say he's going to get 15 targets today, but if we can assume that he winds up being the second guy, like in that Bengals passing tree, like which Joe Burrow apparently wants him to be with all the targets that he got last week, then yes, I would lean more towards T. Higgins. Like where with Toney, we could just see him getting his off of 3 targets and he could wind up having, 80, 90 yards and a touchdown. Right. Where with T, I think it's a less volatile situation. Like we know that the target's going to be there for him.
And I feel good about the Bengals. I mean, look, they went into Detroit and they handled Detroit. Detroit didn't. That was one of the only games this year that Detroit didn't give the opponent a scare and hang around a lot longer than people expected. The Bengals just dismissed them. Everything revolves. It's like 6 degrees of Kadarius Toney today, but it gives us a chance again to talk about some other players. Michael McCauley says Kadarius Toney or Chase Claypool. Talk about wide range of outcomes at Cleveland with the Baker one-armed bandit quarterback today.
I think in this one, I would probably lean towards Tony, but I have no pushback. Like if you want to look at the matchup, look at the situation. So there's no Eric Ebron.
Right.
I know everybody's excited about Pat Freiermuth, and that's fine. But does this now, with losing yet another receiver, force the Steelers to rethink how they're deploying Chase Claypool? Like I'm happy with what we're seeing from Deontay Johnson. But if Deontay Johnson is still running those intermediate routes where Ben just has to take the snap, look up, Deontay Johnson's there, and just fire him the ball, how long is that going to continue to work? And against this pass rush that they're going to go up against with Cleveland, there has to be a more diverse passing game than just doing that. Like once they get the ball, so at least from a rational coaching standpoint, you would think Chase Claypool would also be involved, like in a similar fashion, and with. Other than that, it's just, but we haven't seen it yet. Like similar to what we were talking about earlier, it's just haven't seen that happen. So I lean more towards Tony, but I can understand like why folks would want to at least try and take a shot on Claypool today.
What's my Steelers neurosis saying? Like you're depending on Ben Roethlisberger, and it just, I don't know. I'm really fascinated to see what's going to happen in that game. See, this is the perfect weekend to be a Bengals fan, right? Because the Ravens are off. Who cares? The Bengals have the Jets. And then you have the Steelers and the Browns. It's not quite an elimination game, but the team that loses this game probably really has to look in the mirror and say, where are we headed this year?
Right.
Because, the last time as a Steelers fan, I'm focused in on this game because remember what happened the last time the Browns and the Steelers hooked up? It was in the playoffs. It was embarrassing. In some ways, it was the death scene. We're in the post-death scene, like with the closing credits rolling right now. But it was kind of the death scene of the Roethlisberger Steelers. And the Browns are trying to say that their 2021 isn't over. Baker Mayfield's trying to say, I can play through this broken, shredded shoulder that I have. So lots of fascinating stuff on the slate today. Chris, anyone else that like for your personal decisions or a player that you want to get out there that people are struggling with that you want to take a strong stance on, or any other parting shots before we start to gear up for week 8?
I think it's just the whole that Kansas City Giants game. It's so simple to think that. Okay, well, it's Kansas City versus the Giants. All right, like we were saying earlier, get right spot for Patrick Mahomes. But is it? We said the same thing about Washington, and then for a half of that game, we're like, is the Chiefs' offense broken? And then they came back, and then against Tennessee, it was like the Chiefs' offense. Oh, they are broken. Like this is not good. So I don't know. I just have so many questions, and I've tried to read as much as I can on how. Defenses are now changing the way that they approach Patrick Mahomes. There's a great piece from Mark Schofield on just like how the defensive coverages have switched. So just trying to understand like what the Chiefs need to do differently in order to at least like have some sort of fighting chance in the AFC West. I don't have a strong stance on any of them. I mean, of course, you're starting, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, but it's just like, should we change our expectations like from from here on out? Which I think the answer is yes. But it's just, I don't know. It's kind of sad to see, like, after thinking that this was going to be more or less a dynasty that we would continue to rely on year in and year out.
Right. Things move so fast in the NFL. Joe Bryant likes to say that things move pretty fast in the NFL. And how can there be a dynasty? The league figures you out, or otherwise there's enough cracks that the load-bearing walls start coming down. And certainly for the Giants, who are playing on house money, basically, they can accelerate that tailspin for the Chiefs. And like you said, and are we looking at the Chiefs offense differently? Not that we're going to change our lineup decisions on guys like Mahomes and Hill and Kelce. It certainly can enter into the DFS picture. Darrell Williams, there's implications there. But I'm still interested on the other side of it, Chris. Could we start to look at the Giants offense differently? And they still haven't gotten Barkley or Golladay back, but this could still be a very fun offense for fantasy football, and it all converges at Daniel Jones. And look, Daniel Jones, when you're setting your lineup this week or any given week, and it's going to be even better when Barkley and Golladay are back, but especially against the Chiefs, Daniel Jones' top range of outcomes is like 35 or 40 points this week.
Mhm.
Remember, he can run, and on any given play when he scrambles, and hopefully the Giants are giving him the green light on any given play when he scrambles, that can be a 60 or 70-yard touchdown. You know, I mean, he's capable of it. He's done it. And isn't the Chiefs defense the defense that is prone to give up plays like that, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I'm fascinated. It's all good, fascinating stuff. Certainly, we got a Dallas, Minnesota game tonight. We have that interesting game tomorrow, and all kinds of stuff. And then hopefully the Bengals just hold serve. I got to mention again, Chris. You know, John Norton did the IDP Blitz with me this week. He was wearing his Bengals gear. He was as happy as I've ever seen him.
Yeah.
And he gave us the Who Day as soon as we went live.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome, man. You got to enjoy your moments when you have them, and it's certainly a great moment, and many more great moments to come with the Bengals, with Chris Allen, with Dr. Jene Bramel. Folks, we love everybody showing up. 300 plus 360. The numbers keep going up here, joining us on Sunday mornings. Again, like the video, comment on the video, subscribe, get your notifications. So you'll never miss so many wonderful, great videos on the Football Guys YouTube channel. And we're just enjoying this journey with you all. And it's an honor, a privilege, a pleasure to take it with you because you're so classy.